Welcome to Hong Kong Brief. The content of the briefing includes: China ready to let some troubled property firms go bust, Housing Minister. Hong Kong energy giant CLP takes the nuclear option to hit decarbonization goals. Hong Kong hotel tax sparks concerns from sector but tourists unfazed. These are the best countries for wealthy expats. Xi Jinping's high-tech push steals the spotlight at China's two sessions. China ready to let some troubled property firms go bust, Housing Minister. South China Morning Post. China's Housing Minister, An Hong, has said that Beijing will aim to stabilize the country's property market while allowing some troubled developers to go bankrupt or be restructured. China's property sector has been grappling with a liquidity crisis since mid-2021, with major developers defaulting on or delaying debt payments following a regulatory crackdown on high leverage. An also said that to deal with a funding crunch in the sector, his ministry and the National Financial Regulatory Administration unveiled a plan in January to establish a mechanism to better coordinate with financial institutions to help real estate projects. Hong Kong energy giant CLP takes the nuclear option to hit decarbonization goals. South China Morning Post. CLP Holdings, Hong Kong's second-largest power supplier, plans to import more nuclear power from the mainland in a bid to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. The utility company is looking to increase its share of clean energy and is exploring alternative sources from China's Guangdong province. CLP Holdings has also revealed plans to increase its renewable energy asset portfolio in mainland China and India. Hong Kong hotel tax sparks concerns from sector but tourists unfazed. South China Morning Post. Hong Kong is reintroducing a 3% hotel tax from January 1 next year, 17 years after it was waived. Financial Secretary Paul Chan Imopa said the measure would generate 1.1 billion Hong Kong dollars, $141 million, annually and pledged to allocate 1 billion Hong Kong dollars to improve tourism infrastructure and services. However, those in the sector have argued that the tax is being reintroduced too soon, before tourism can return to pre-COVID-19 levels. Others have said that the government should rethink the timeline for its reintroduction. Casper Sui Ing-wai, executive director of the Federation of Hong Kong Hotel Owners, said, "Our attraction has never been low prices, but service quality and experience." Levying this charge shows that the government thinks that the market has the ability to compete. Hong Kong attracted 34 million visitors last year, 52% of its 2018 peak, with the mainland being the largest source of visitors. These are the best countries for wealthy expats. Bloomberg. The UK's decision to scrap its non-dom status for wealthy foreigners has prompted some to seek alternative countries where they can protect their assets. The article highlights 5 countries that offer benefits for expats: the Cayman Islands, Antigua and Barbuda, Dubai, Italy, and Singapore. These countries have different tax laws and benefits, such as no income tax, low corporate taxes, and citizenship programs that offer visa-free travel. Monaco is also mentioned as a popular destination for wealthy individuals due to its low taxes and glitzy lifestyle, although property prices are high. Xi Jinping's high-tech push steals the spotlight at China's two sessions. South China Morning Post. China's biggest political gathering of the year, the annual sessions of the National People's Congress, NPC, and the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, CPPCC, has focused on President Xi Jinping's push for homegrown technology. Xi has called on Chinese scientists and military representatives to enhance the country's strategic capabilities in emerging areas, urging them to integrate high-tech developments into their work. The comments are seen as the most prominent policy direction to come out of the two sessions so far, as Premier Li Qiang has scaled back his office's role in diplomacy and public discourse. How to get to South Pole. One record-breaking woman started by Googling it. South China Morning Post. Preet Chandy, a physiotherapist and British Army medical officer, has become the fastest woman to ski solo across Antarctica. She completed the 1,130 kilometers (702-mile) journey in just 31 days. This is not Chandy's first record-breaking feat. She previously completed the longest solo unsupported polar expedition and became the first woman of color to ski to the South Pole solo. Chandy says she was inspired to achieve these feats after being told no. She was labeled disrespectful and rebellious by her family and community when she refused to conform to traditional expectations. Chandy's wedding is this week, but she is still being celebrated for her incredible achievements. For Hong Kong to reach net zero, rethink our air-conditioned glass boxes. South China Morning Post. Hong Kong's buildings account for 90% of all electricity used in the city, resulting in 60% of the city's carbon emissions. The financial secretary has announced a pilot scheme to explore photovoltaic technology for the facades of government buildings, but this move must be combined with an overall reduction in energy use. Buildings in Hong Kong need to have a more considered relationship with the local climate, using facades that block heat more effectively and allow for passive moderation of the internal environment. Developers also need to play their part by focusing on sustainability when assessing gross floor area. Balance struck in Hong Kong's EV tax break extension. SCMP opinion. Hong Kong has extended tax incentives for electric vehicles, EVs, for another 2 years, despite the government's budget deficit pressures. The tax breaks were first introduced in 2018, resulting in a significant increase in the proportion of EVs among newly registered private cars. However, from April, the maximum first registration tax concession for electric private cars will be reduced by 40%, potentially dampening enthusiasm for EVs. Despite this, industry players believe that the market for lower-priced EVs, including those made in mainland China, will continue to grow. Debt markets priced for perfection risk a stumble. Bloomberg. Investors are moving up the risk curve and embracing credit as they seek high yields before the Federal Reserve starts to cut interest rates. Money is flowing into junk bonds, and high-grade funds have seen the largest weekly inflow since September 2020. Bond managers say it would take a U-turn from the Federal Reserve on interest rate cuts to cause sentiment to turn negative, and that a rotation out of money funds and into debt could cause spreads to narrow further. Sales of junior ranking debt from European peripheral nations are evidence of the reach for returns. Copyright law update required to keep pace with AI advances. SCMP opinion. Hong Kong is planning to update its copyright legislation to address the challenges posed by generative artificial intelligence, AI. A consultation on the issue is expected to take place later this year. One of the main issues is whether AI-generated content should be covered by copyright, and if so, who owns the rights to the work created. Different countries have taken different approaches to this issue, with China ruling that AI-generated content can attract copyright, while the UK's Supreme Court ruled that AI cannot be named as an inventor under patent laws. The proposed changes to Hong Kong's copyright laws aim to bring them in line with international developments and ensure that intellectual property is protected in the age of AI. Balance the right to privacy with stamping out organized crime, NAB. The Sydney Morning Herald. National Australia Bank, NAB, has called on the Australian government to strike a balance between protecting personal data and fighting organized crime as it introduces new privacy laws. The Attorney General is expected to introduce changes to the Privacy Act after a review recommended 116 measures for better protection of personal information. Proposed changes would enable Australians to sue for privacy invasion, avoid targeting by firms using sensitive information, and demand data erasure. NAB executive Paul Jevtovic, formerly head of financial intelligence regulator AUSTRAC, said the greatest threat to organized crime came from collaboration between governments and the private sector. Definition of external forces in Hong Kong's security bill should be precise. SCMP opinion. The broad definition of external forces in Hong Kong's new domestic security law could harm the city's international ties and multicultural environment, warns an op-ed in the South China Morning Post. The law defines external forces as including international organizations, companies, individuals, and non-governmental organizations. This broad definition could discourage engagement with foreign entities at a time when Hong Kong needs international engagement to attract talent, tourists, and investment. Hong Kong fast-tracks new security law at Beijing's urging. Japan Times. Hong Kong is fast-tracking new security legislation that would impose life sentences for crimes such as treason and give police expanded powers amid increased pressure from Chinese leaders to get the process wrapped up quickly. The 212-page bill was published by the government and debated in hastily arranged sessions in the city's legislature on Friday. The government sped up the process after senior Chinese officials attending the National People's Congress, NPC, urged the law's passing, with leader John Lee returning early from Beijing to Hong Kong. It was the first time a draft law was gazetted and debated in the Legislative Council on the same day since the former British colony returned to Chinese rule in 1997, according to a review of lawmaking records. The hearings will continue on Saturday. Hong Kong Football Club lose Thriller to Sandy Bay but pip them to league title. South China Morning Post. The Hong Kong Football Club, HKFC, retained their Nan Fung Suet Men's Premiership title despite losing their final match against closest rival Sandy Bay. HKFC finished with 3 successive defeats after an unbeaten 12-match run from the start of the season. Sandy Bay needed a bonus point fourth try to claim their first title, but HKFC manned the barricades and reined in their attacking instincts to prevent that. Logan Asplin, the HKFC head coach, said the team had an empty feeling after the match. World-class events will lure tourists to Hong Kong, say LIV golf fans. South China Morning Post. Hong Kong's Fan Ling Golf Course was the venue for the LIV golf tournament, which attracted thousands of fans, some of whom flew to the city specifically for the event. The tournament, which featured top golfers such as Jon Rahm and Abraham Ancer, was one of 3 major international sporting events to be awarded M-Mark status by Hong Kong's Major Sports Event Committee, allowing the events to seek government backing and funding. The event was seen as an opportunity to boost Hong Kong's image as a sporting events and tourism hub. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the 6 Degrees world, bringing you the latest news and insights from around the globe. Let's dive right into today's headlines. First up, China's housing minister has announced that Beijing will stabilize the country's property market while allowing some troubled developers to go bankrupt or be restructured. This move comes as China's property sector has been facing a liquidity crisis, and this decision aims to address the issue while also coordinating with financial institutions to help real estate projects. In energy news, Hong Kong CLP Holdings, the second-largest power supplier, plans to import more nuclear power from mainland China to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. The company is also looking to increase its renewable energy assets in mainland China and India, signaling a commitment to clean energy. Moving on to tourism, Hong Kong is reintroducing a 3% hotel tax starting from next year. While concerns have been raised by industry professionals, tourists seem unfazed by the tax. The government plans to use the revenue generated to improve tourism infrastructure and services. In other news, Bloomberg has highlighted 5 countries that are popular among wealthy expats seeking alternative options after the UK scrapped its non-dom status. The Cayman Islands, Antigua and Barbuda, Dubai, Italy, and Singapore offer different tax laws and benefits for expats. Over in China, President Xi Jinping's push for homegrown technology has taken the spotlight at the annual sessions of the National People's Congress and the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. Xi has called for the enhancement of China's strategic capabilities in emerging areas, particularly in high-tech developments. In a remarkable feat, physiotherapist and British Army medical officer Preet Chandy has become the fastest woman to ski solo across Antarctica. Chandy's determination to achieve these record-breaking feats stemmed from being told no and defying traditional expectations. She is now being celebrated for her incredible achievements. Shifting to environmental matters, Hong Kong's buildings account for a significant portion of the city's electricity consumption and carbon emissions. The financial secretary has announced a pilot scheme to explore photovoltaic technology for government buildings, but more efforts are needed to reduce energy use and promote sustainability in the construction industry. In Hong Kong's efforts to promote electric vehicles, EVs, tax incentives for EVs have been extended for another 2 years. However, the maximum first registration tax concession for electric private cars will be reduced by 40%, potentially impacting the growth of the EV market. In global finance, investors are embracing credit and moving up the risk curve in search of high yields. This trend is fueled by the anticipation of interest rate cuts from the Federal Reserve. Bond managers believe that a U-turn by the Fed could cause sentiment to turn negative, while a rotation out of money funds and into debt could further narrow spreads. Hong Kong is also planning to update its copyright legislation to address the challenges posed by generative artificial intelligence, AI. The proposed changes aim to bring Hong Kong's copyright laws in line with international developments in protecting intellectual property in the age of AI. In Australia, National Australia Bank, NAB, has called for a balance between protecting personal data and fighting organised crime as new privacy laws are introduced. NAB's executive highlights the need for collaboration between governments and the private sector to combat organised crime effectively. Turning to Hong Kong's security law, concerns have been raised about the broad definition of external forces and its potential impact on the city's international ties and multicultural environment. The law defines external forces as including international organizations, companies, individuals, and non-governmental organizations. Hong Kong is fast-tracking new security legislation, under pressure from Chinese leaders, which would impose life sentences for certain crimes and grant expanded powers to the police. The bill is being debated in the Legislative Council, with the government expediting the process at the urging of senior Chinese officials. In sports, the Hong Kong Football Club, HKFC, retained their Nan Fung Suet Men's Premiership title despite losing their final match against Sandy Bay. HKFC finished with an unbeaten 12-match run from the start of the season, securing the title despite the loss. Lastly, Hong Kong's Fan Ling Golf Course hosted the LIV Golf Tournament, attracting thousands of fans, some of whom traveled specifically for the event. The tournament, awarded M-Mark status, aimed to boost Hong Kong's image as a sporting events and tourism hub. That's all for today's news roundup. I hope you enjoyed the stories and analysis. Now it's time to hear from you. What are your thoughts on these topics? Do you have any questions? Let's open the floor to discussion. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.